2026 Clean Water Services Board of Directors meeting. Clerk Hodges, could you do us the honor, please?
Absolutely. The Board of Directors for Clean Water Services is meeting in this regular session on April 28th, 2026. Director Snyder?
Here.
Director Treese?
Here.
Director Fye?
Present.
Director Willie?
Here.
Chair Harrington?
Here. Next item on the agenda is public communication. This is an opportunity for members of our community to come and share their thoughts with us on Clean Water Services business for up to 3 minutes an individual. Clerk Hodges, do we have anyone who wishes to do so?
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to provide any public comment for up to 3 minutes on any Clean Water Services related topic? Please raise your hand and come forward. I'm not seeing any hands. We did have one sign up ahead of time. Deanna Johnson. Deanna, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Please go ahead for up to 3 minutes.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I just want to thank everyone again for this opportunity to speak today. I also want to apologize for coming in a little hot last time. And thank you, Commissioner Snyder, for reminding us that, prices for everything are going up, which obviously is true for every single thing, including utilities. However, I know that one of the things that was brought to the last rate increase in May of last year was that Ripple facility and the $65 million. And one of the neighbors was like, well, why can't you use like an existing building? There's like 8 of them out there, which understandably is probably contributing to the additional cost of how things are going to be ran around Clean Water Services. But I think we've kind of lost sight of the original question that Commissioner Snyder had asked last May. He had referenced the emergency funds and squirreling away money and wanting to know what types of things have you spent the money on, the public retirement system, raises. But I'm looking for the enthusiasm for offering some type of low-income assistance. I know that we had a lady last May testified about her CWS bill. She was with Raleigh Hill Waters. I looked at Raleigh Hill Waters. They get their water from City of Portland too, and they pay $2.84 per CCF. Why am I paying $11 and my water comes from City? It's like the highest and the lowest. It's like you've also been misled to believe that the low-income assistance that 12th and Valley is providing, which they manage CWS's billing, is phenomenal, which it's questionable at best. I've communicated, look, we got a 20% rate increase and a 20% discount. And then they internally, with the board that works for them, implemented 2 more rate increases that we're looking at a third one this upcoming November. I just kind of wanted to put that out there that, look, that low-income assistance, it helps their side of the bill only, which again, they're still getting more money even with a low-income discount because they're just raising rates to kind of overshadow that. But I'm looking for some type of assistance. Like Commissioner Snyder said, everything is going up, but I'm looking for some assistance, and so are others in the neighborhood that have pretty much given up. They believe that, look, there's nothing to complain, but I'm like a dog with a bone coming from sales and software. You got to scrap for every little thing, and that includes advocating for my neighborhood. So I thank you, and I heed my time.
Ms. Johnson, this is Chair Harrington, Director
Yes.
Harrington. Based upon the information you provided for us here in mentioning Ripple, I just want to assure that you know that we're utilizing an existing building. It is not a brand new build. Similarly, with our Clean Water Services Central Office building, we once again leveraged an existing building versus building a new building as a means to save money and get the operations underway in a more timely fashion than a new build. So just for that one aspect, I wanted to make sure that you had appropriate information there. So thank you. Clerk
Thank you as
Hodges, do we have anyone else?
Is there any other member on Zoom that wishes to provide any public comment for up to 3 minutes? Please utilize the raise hand function. Not seeing any hands, Chair Harrington.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to tonight's consent agenda, which consists of 4 items, 1 set of minutes, and then 3 per usual contracts and intergovernmental agreements for projects. What are the wishes of the commission regarding to tonight's consent agenda?
Move to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, directors. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Next, we'll move on to our one presentation for this evening. It's an update on design and construction standards, the revision process, as well as public engagement activities. And I'll turn it over to our expert staff.
Thank you, Chair and board members. Joe Gall, Chief Utility Relations Officer. I'm here with Damon Reishi, the Division Manager for the Planning and Development Services Division. He's going to be primarily updating the board on this process. As you know, this is a large priority for CWS, and it's being led out of the RUSD department and led primarily by Damon and the team. He's been down this road before, and a lot of work's been going on, and we had built into the schedule a number of touch points with the board to keep you abreast. This is kind of a work session, but it's at your business meeting. We're going to be respectful of time, but because we want to end on time and provide a break for your county board meeting. So with that, I'll hand it over to Damon.
Good evening. Just want to note that Joe mentioned the team, and one of our biggest team members, actually my partner in this project, is Elle Warline, who's joining us in the audience this evening. So I end up doing a lot of the presentations, but Elle is very involved. So Shannon Huggins is also with us this evening and has been coordinating a lot of our public outreach. So there's a lot of other team members that aren't here this evening, but this is not by any means only me doing this. So, okay. Joe mentioned that this was really intended to be kind of a work session, so please feel free to ask questions as we go. There's a lot of information. We've been talking with different groups. This is kind of a summary of some of the discussions or topics that we've talked, both with city partners and with CWAC. So please jump in if I'm saying something that doesn't make any sense. The presentation this evening, want to touch on stakeholder engagement and our schedule. Want to talk a bit about some of the technical pieces that we're having to work through. That's the rainfall analysis, and that leads to how we size facilities and develop a design storm, and then criteria around how you decide what path you go down. And then we're on the cusp of a public draft, and so we'll talk a little bit about what you can expect with that. Just as a reminder, this is a slide that you saw back in December. Really, why are we doing this right now? And the update is being driven by our watershed-based National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Systems permit. We have a couple of things that we need to accomplish by November 1st of 2026, and that is to prioritize on-site retention, or it can be local regional retention of stormwater and pollutant removal. That's water quality treatment. And to do that, we have to develop a design storm. We also need to prioritize green infrastructure before either using hardscape controls or offset programs like fee and lieu. I'll talk, go ahead, please.
Before you move on, I just have a question, so feel free to finish this slide if you want.
No, I was about to move on.
Oh, okay, thank you. So we've had a prior version of design and construction standards before. So under the why now and changes for compliance, I'm not clear on the why now. Like,
Okay.
So is it that we gained experience with that and anticipated that there would be some needs through the next permit process. So we were like giving ourselves a homework assignment, and now we're following up on that, or, sorry, I'm making stuff up.
Nope, that's okay. We try to be proactive, and certainly we've learned things as we go, but we do have a 5-year permit cycle. And with that permit cycle, it's not unusual, not every time, but frequently, we have requirements within the stormwater section throughout the permit of things that we need to do. And often it's this what we call post-construction runoff control requirements. That's stormwater requirements for development.
But am I correct that we've had like,
Yes, we've definitely, the last time we did it for stormwater was around 2019, and it was specifically addressing hydromodification. I'll touch on hydromodification,
But this
how that
takes it
relates
further.
to this in a minute.
got it?
It's related because it's stormwater, but it is a little bit different piece,
Okay.
and we're not touching that this
You
time.
now have me where you needed me to be.
Okay.
Thank you, that was helpful.
And I will touch on some of this and a little more detail in a minute about these things that we need to do. But before that, I was going to talk about the process a bit. And this is an updated schedule. It's probably gotten busier since the last time that you saw it. Dates have slided around a bit. It's, pretty accurate for next week, and the further out you get, like a weather forecast, the more likely it is to change. So since we came to you in December to kick this off formally, we've been working with a CWS and city staff technical work group quite a bit to start to understand what we need to do, make some decisions. We've also engaged with our Clean Water Advisory Commission and formed a subcommittee out of that and have met with them. And we're just about to a point where we think we have something that we can release to the public that is coherent enough that they can understand what we're trying to do. That's the initial public draft. We're targeting the next few weeks for that. We have a June 10 Clean Water Advisory Commission public forum scheduled. That'll be in the evening at 6 p.m., I believe. That will be an opportunity after the draft has come out for people to come and provide feedback and have some discussion with a variety of stakeholder interests. We anticipate there'll likely be a second public draft. These are informal public drafts, so it's not going through our process where we do a public hearing. It's just we put it out to the public so that they can provide feedback. We can try to address concerns and get it as close to something that is approvable before we bring it to the board. That'll likely be late summer or fall. And then, of course, we're targeting to have this adopted before November 1st. And I'll just mention now, so I don't forget, I've already heard some questions and comments about how implementation might work with this. And would current standards apply to my in-process project, or would the new standards apply while I'm already partway through my project? And typically what we have done and are looking to do this time is to have a implementation that occurs around land use, likely land use application, that if you've made application, as you continue through that process, it's the standards that are in place at the time you made application. So if you're ahead of the effective date of November 1, it would be the standards we have today. If you're making application after November 1st, it would be the new standards. Ends up being that we have to manage both sets of standards for a time, but eventually the current standards trail off. Some of the stakeholder engagement we've been doing, I mentioned the staff technical working group. This is Clean Water Services staff and our cities, staff from our cities that implement the local program. So in these cities, they are actually implementing the design and construction standards on a day-to-day basis, issuing permits. So we've included them as part of staff, and then we're using Brown and Caldwell as our technical consultants to help us develop an initial draft. The cities have been very helpful as we've got a working draft going around. They've provided a lot of feedback. We've actually reorganized the draft based on some of the feedback, so that's been a really, really good experience. Our Clean Water Advisory Commission, we met with them and they showed quite a bit of interest and wanted to have more involvement, so we formed a subcommittee that's 5 representatives. There's an environmental development and business rep, and then 2 of the neighborhood reps. We're also planning some stakeholder informational meetings. This came out of a suggestion from the subcommittee, and one is geared towards the development community and would be hosted by the Home Builders Association of Portland. And in particular, what they'd like to do is have some of their engineers attend a meeting so that their engineers can talk to our consultant and have that back and forth discussion, because some of this is pretty technical. The Riverkeepers were also interested in hosting a meeting, and they've got a group that might be particularly interested. So we're looking at tentatively the last week in May to have a meeting with them. Washington County, we've been coordinating with their LUT group. So far, we've met with the Capital Group. Of course, they build lots of roads, and stormwater is a requirements or something that they really need to consider as they develop their projects. So they're very interested. And then we're also going to meet with a broader group from Washington County LUT just to make sure that there's awareness. It was also suggested during a CWAC meeting that maybe we could include the business community, and we're looking to see if we can go to a West Side Economic Alliance meeting. Just real quick, everybody who's interested can join or go to our website. We have a dedicated revision web page. It's most easily accessible if you go to our normal design and construction standards web page. There's a link right at the top. This is where all of our drafts will be posted and other information. We're also doing a email mailer that goes out. I think there's over 800 emails on the list. A lot of that came from developers that and contractors that we work with that are in our permitting system, but we've also included other interested parties, and anyone can sign up to be on that. So if you run into people that are interested in learning more, they can go to this website and join, and it'll be announced anytime there is new information coming out. The informal drafts will look something like this. This is from the 2019 update, and it shows everything that changes, everything that's removed, everything that's new, and also includes reader notes in a gray box that kind of have some context as to why the change is occurring. I'm going to move into talking about some of the technical stuff. Any questions about the stakeholder engagement? Okay. Trying. So the required changes that we have to make that are directly from the permit is that we have to develop a standard around infiltration. This is the retention piece. So Retention roughly equates to infiltration in this situation. So we got to come up with a numerical stormwater retention requirement. And out of that, develop a design storm that you use to size a facility. In order to do that, we had to go through and update our rainfall analysis, and then choose a methodology for this numerical stormwater retention requirement. How do we figure out the storms? There's a few different methods. The third bullet on here, I'm going to skip to for a second. That's for the water quality design, and that's if you're just doing treatment only, not the retention piece. The permit is specific that we have to use, we have to update our design storm to use a method that is 80% of the average annual runoff volume. That is one of the methods that we could use to develop a numerical stormwater retention requirement and develop that design storm. So we could have two different storms that were developed differently, or we could use the same methodology, and working with our co-implementers have gone down the path of using that same methodology. We also need to come up with what we've been calling infeasibility criteria for when you don't have to do infiltration or you don't have to do green infrastructure, what kind of bumps you into different categories. A different way of thinking about this, a little bit more visual, is that you have this hierarchy that goes through the standards of first you need to retain or infiltrate. If that's not feasible, then you need to do at least water quality treatment. And if that's not feasible, then you can do water quality benefit offset. That's like paying a fee in lieu. With all of this, the priority is to have green infrastructure be the first choice, and kind of the same idea. If you can't do the green infrastructure, then there's got to be some reasons or criteria for when you can do gray infrastructure. Got hydromodification off to the side. It's still a requirement. The permit is explicit that we still have to keep running that program, but it is really, we're going to talk about volume of a water quality storm. Hydromodification is also volume. It's a larger volume. It's more about the runoff and causing erosion in the streams. This is really focused in on water quality. So the rainfall analysis, we had an old rainfall analysis that had taken us through 2007, last updated in 2009. Our first step was to get new data up to 2022, was available at the time. Looked at 16 gauges across our service district, took all that information, combined it, and using this average annual runoff-based method, basically what you do is you look at all the rainfall data for that entire period, and you clump rainfall events into these storms. And the way that you do that is you figure out dry periods in between. They're called inter-event times. So the data looks different if you have a 6-hour dry period between what you call a new storm versus a 12-hour dry period between what you call a new storm. So are you lumping or splitting, basically, is what it comes down to. And then you also have what they call this abstraction value. There's a certain amount of rain that doesn't really run off. It just gets the ground wet, and each jurisdiction has to kind of decide what that should be. We've used 1/10 of an inch so far. So that's very high level what the consultant did. There's a lot more that goes into it than that, and they run models to figure it all out.
Is that 0.1, can you go back? Sorry.
Yes, absolutely.
Is the 0.1 inches or less considered to not run off at all? Is that sort of standard in the industry, or?
Yeah, I mean, this next, I don't specifically have that value in this next slide. Every jurisdiction's a little different. All those numbers are a little different. Inter-event times can be different, but there are some jurisdictions that use numbers that are smaller than 1/10 of an inch and some that are bigger. The rainfall looks a lot different from one jurisdiction to the next as well. I'm going to talk about soils a little bit in a minute with infiltration. That can look very different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So speaking of the standard and what everybody else is doing, we're actually the last Oregon MS4 permitted entity that is implementing this. Both the other phase 1s and phase 2s had to do this by 2024. We've got a little bit different kind of permit. We're a little bit behind in the cycle. That's why it's coming to us now. So we do have the advantage of seeing what everybody else did and kind of trying to understand. So that was part of the evaluation. I won't dig real deep into these numbers, but you'll notice that the very top category is clean water services, and that our current water quality design storm is 0.36 inches in 4 hours. It's a really old method that was used back in the 90s. It doesn't even really equate to how we're talking about doing this now. So you can't scale it up. If you try to multiply that out, it doesn't work. But you can kind of see where some of the other jurisdictions in the state have landed, and a lot of them are using that average annual runoff method. 80% is pretty typical. There are some, like Portland, that have gone a bit higher.
So I was just going to contribute that I remember when we had one of our all-day work sessions over at the facility.
Central?
No.
Oh.
No, the one over by Beaverton School District Admin Headquarters.
Field operations?
Field operations, thank you. All I could conjure up was the letter F. And it wasn't about design and construction standards, but rather it was a time when the agency was working on an updated climate model. And Ting Lu, who was with us then, gave us a presentation about different scenario, storms and heat, different scenarios. And this was, I think, after we had adopted the design and construction standards that you took us through prior to 2022. So I just wanted to flag that I learned a lot about the work that CWS does by getting a high-level overview of sort of these, what did you call them, the design storms?
Yeah.
So I look forward to, before we adopt the final draft version, getting some more of an overview about these design storms so that I can feel like, okay, I'm in the 2026 no versus back to the 2009 and 2022 no.
Well, just wait. It's about to come.
Well, you're always advancing our understanding of the important and necessary work that the agency does. So thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to drag you into it a little bit here right now. And just on design storms too, the district's got lots of design storms for different things, which is important to be aware of. So we have another design storm we look at for I&I on Sani. And so design storm gets used a lot in engineering. So just to be aware that we do have them for many different things. And even in the design and construction standards, there's different design storms. There's a different one for hydromodification, for instance. So this rainfall analysis design storm results, we had the new period of 2007 to 2022. And then we also combine that in that right-hand column with the older data. And those inter-event times that I mentioned are the rows. And so you've got that 6-hour inter-event time on the top and then 12 hours. And you can kind of see what this volume is around this runoff average, 80% average annual runoff. And it can be different depending on what group of data you take. And the inter-event time does have some impact on that. We've leaned towards
Expect it to go down.
what?
I didn't expect it to go down.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that too. Like, I mean, just the way
Yeah.
the data's presented, there's less rain from 07 to 22.
Yeah, so
But the intent,
rainfall patterns are changing.
yeah.
And this data was not collected in a way to try to, you could probably use some of the data from this to look at how rainfall has changed. This wasn't set up specifically to do that. But yes, it did decrease. And some of that could be not that there isn't as much volume, but how that rain is coming to us.
So the intensity can
The intensity, right? So, I mean,
So the volume is lower.
when I first came to, or was coming up to Oregon a lot, I remember it was always drizzly. It wasn't unusual for it to be drizzly around 4th of July. And it just was that sort of always wet, but not real heavy rain. And now we have big downpours. They come and they go. So the patterns are changing, and that can change your data.
Could I ask a question? I don't understand why one of these columns is 2007 to 2022 and the other one is 1991.
They added the old data in.
So you just brought it forward? Is that, okay, that's,
And we probably could have had another column that was the 91 to 2007 data too.
so it's just to show the incremental.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And we were, part of what the discussion was, this was with our co-implementer staff group. What data set are we going to use? We kind of landed on let's use the total data set. We also had a discussion around what inter-event time do we use, and kind of landed on let's split the difference. We didn't come up with an inter-event time in the middle, but we looked at 9/10 of an inch and 1.27 inches and said, well, 1 inch is somewhere in between that, which is what this, well, you'll see that come better. Just hold on to those numbers. It'll come back in the next slide. But I also want to describe really quick the idea of infiltration and a couple different kinds of facilities that you're going to see listed in the next slide. So there's rain gardens, which are on the left. They just don't have a hard structure around them. They've got side slopes. They tend to be a bit bigger because of how they're designed, whereas you have an infiltration planter that has these vertical sides. It can be a little more compact. The idea is they work the same way. Their bottom is open to the native soil, and that allows water to get into that ground. That's that infiltration and the retention piece that we're being required to implement. We have very clayey soils in Washington County. Often they're classified in the C/D range. You'll hear that terminology versus like A and B soils that can be more sandy or loamy and allow water to move through them quickly. C/D clay soils tend to only allow a little bit of water at a time to go through, and so water can pond or back up in those. That's a challenge for infiltration and something that we've been thinking about a lot as we try to figure out how do we maximize the opportunity to get retention. So this is really a summary of how throwing all these results, the design storm, the looking at sizing of rain gardens, what your different infiltration rates might be for different storms, along with different design storm numbers in there. So your top set of numbers, you've got the sort of the three main columns. You've got that 9/10 of an inch in 24 hours, 1 inch in 24 hours, and the 1.27 inches in 24 hours. So that 9/10 was, if I get this right, the 6-hour inner event time, and the 1.27 was the 12-hour inner event time. Under that are infiltration rates, and we kind of covered a range of those. 2 hours would be very, very sandy soil that allowed water to move through quickly. 1/10 of an inch would be pretty clay type soil. And then we've got that blue column that's water quality treatment only. So then you've got rain garden and planters, and what sizing factors would be necessary in order to infiltrate the entire storm. So it's those three columns, the 0.9, the 1, and the 1.27. That's the size facility necessary to get all of that water into the ground within the 24-hour drawdown time. I know it's a lot.
I don't quite get the legend.
Yes, I will explain that
okay.
next. So there's supposed to be two shades of green. It's kind of a yellow color and a green color. So,
On our monitors.
oh, okay. The lighter color is over the 6%, and the greener color is under 6%. The reason we have 6% is our current standards for a volume-based facility that uses a volume-based design storm, which is what we're talking about here, is 6%, just across the board, 6%. That is whether you are allowing for some retention or you're just doing treatment. So you can see there's a range of sizes. The blue is water quality only. If you're not trying to get water into the native ground and you're just trying to provide that treatment, that's the sizing that's necessary. Just using, the vegetated and soil component within the structure. So there's a range here. One of the things that many jurisdictions do is put a cutoff both on the bottom end and the top end. That basically you don't try to infiltrate the entire design storm. If your infiltration rate is below a certain area, you may still have an open bottom and allow for as much infiltration as you can achieve, but not necessarily require 37% sizing. Some jurisdictions cut it off on a maximum sizing, will never require above 10% sizing.
And those are just practicality considerations as to why that decision's made?
Yes. On the other end of the spectrum, it's can be limited on how much infiltration will we let you count, so that you don't get a situation where somebody is overestimating how much infiltration may be possible and undersize a facility. So we can kind of put limits on both ends of that. And then the water quality treatment piece, there are some cases where you don't want infiltration or you can't have infiltration and you only want to do water quality. So it's useful to understand that sizing. So I'm going to move into the criteria next and feasibility criteria. Questions on this? We can come back. Some might come up as a result. I'll say we got really deep into this with our co-implementer group. We've got a number of engineers on the group, and they are very knowledgeable about stormwater, And so there was a lot of discussion, and continues to be, to figure this out.
I know
Yes.
we're not engineers, but you got into it quite a bit with us too.
I'm not an engineer either, and I'm pushing at the limits of my abilities here. So the infeasibility criteria. There's kind of three categories that we've been thinking about. One is, where do we want to prohibit infiltration? Then there's other situations where you might not want infiltration, and then infeasibility criteria around green infrastructure. So first, the prohibition of infiltration. This is a comprehensive list, and this is something that through the public process, we also hope to get additional feedback and maybe build this out further. But I think these are sort of the low-hanging fruit categories. Obviously, if you've got steep slopes or landslide susceptibility, you're not going to want to put a bunch of water into the ground, or if that ground is contaminated, or places where the groundwater is high, you're not going to get more water in. So many situations, we might just say, nope, don't try to infiltrate. We don't want that.
But if, but if a land developer buys a piece of property, I'm just going to say in unincorporated Washington County, urban unincorporated Washington County, wasn't sure if I said that right.
Yep.
Will the land developer that's coming to you for permits, or will you know if a particular area has seasonal high groundwater? How do you know that?
Probably both. I mean, a lot of the jurisdictions, like Tualatin knows where their high groundwater is. The whole downtown area has got a lot of high groundwater, so some of that's known. A lot of it can be found from maps. Larger projects have geotechs, and they're looking at that kind of information because it's important for building foundation. So it is known, and it does come out through the process, depending on whether you're a large developer or maybe a small developer or homeowner. The source of the information might be a little bit different.
And sometimes there's surprises. I mean, there was a big surprise in Tigard, not while I was mayor, but while I was a city councilor, that was very substantial right next to 99W and very steep. And I'm not really sure how it got missed, but it was pretty exciting, if you could let me use that word.
Well, I was thinking about a piece of property that's off of Hart Road that is in the UUA, not in the city of Beaverton, but it's an old house on a big piece of property, right? So someday it'll be in the hands of somebody who wants to do something with it, and they're going to be, since they're in the urban growth boundary, subject to all the same community plans, middle housing, all that stuff. And I don't know that too many people have the history of that particular, and it's kind of in a little bit of a bowl, you know, one of those undulating areas. So anyway, okay, thanks. The things you have to think about.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into development for sure, and we're just one piece of it. There might be reasons not to infiltrate beyond just sort of what the prohibited situations are. And that can be anything from maybe it's hard to get drainage to the right spot, or you're in a floodway. There could be zoning and land use. That's a complicated one, and each city could be a little bit unique on that. So we're trying to figure out how to balance certainty with flexibility, always a challenge with standards. Access to the facility and for ability to maintain it. You might be able to fit a facility in, but if our field ops can't get to it to do maintenance, that's problematic. And then also protected natural features like wetlands. If it's going to cause a impact to a natural resource, it has to be evaluated what's the greatest benefit.
Just a quick interrupt.
Yep.
We're at 6:15.
I'm getting close.
Okay. I don't really know what I'm supposed to understand from the pictures, but because of time, I'll just leave it there.
Okay. They're just, I think they're pretty mostly in this case. They do represent
are
some of the
common
discussion
development,
that's going on, but they're not critical to.
But they're real-life development pictures
They
in the
are.
service area. I get that.
I want to call a little bit of attention to minimum infiltration rate. I mentioned this with that table. That's one of those sort of bookends where you don't try to get the entire design storm into the ground and selecting a cutoff for that. We were thinking about a number. We're also talking about, could you use CD soil mapping to have an off-ramp for areas that are clearly going to have trouble with infiltration, so that we're not having people start with going through this whole process just to reach a result that's fairly obvious. So that's some of the discussion we've been having with our technical group about how to actually write the standards to make it easy to understand and easy to work through as you go through the application process. Green infrastructure and feasibility criteria is very similar kinds of things. You're just sort of looking at it for green infrastructure. And I think that the initial draft is probably going to land on you work through the green infrastructure first and then think about infiltration, just because everything kind of comes back to the green infrastructure. So I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation that we were anticipating in the next few weeks here that we'll have our first public draft. We're going to have in that draft a 1-inch 24-hour storm. This whole idea of retention infiltration is new in the standards. We do have a water quality section. I think that's our section 4.04. I think that section is going to be crossed out in its entirety, and we're going to just have a new section to replace it. And that will also include the water quality treatment piece. The low impact development approach section that is roughly equivalent to the green infrastructure will probably just be incorporated into section 4.04. And feasibility criteria also end up kind of getting worked into that. And then later on in the chapter is where you get to the specifics about the design storm and how sizing works, and that's in current section 4.08. Though I mentioned those sections because those are the two sections where the most changes are going to be. We may take an opportunity to clean up a few other things, typos and whatnot, or things that were written wrong, not substantive changes in the rest of chapter 4, but really that's what we're looking at doing. We may need to update a definition or two in chapter 1 as well. I don't know that we'll see that with this first public draft, but this is kind of what you can expect to see in a few weeks.
Okay, now it's time for board discussion. We have a good 5 minutes here. But first, do you have any questions?
No, that was a good presentation.
I have one. It is a great presentation. Thank you for mentioning that. I have one question on the engagement process. I do realize, and I've looked back at slide number 4, and I do recall that there is a member of the development community that is on CWAC. So that's good. But I also want to make sure that there's proactive notification to the Home Builders Association government relations person, so that they know we have an initial draft and what the process is, just in case that communication between those two parties isn't real strong.
I think that communication is strong, but I've also been talking with the Home Builders Association, and we're working on setting up a meeting specifically with them.
Terrific. And also, I can't remember the scheduling of the Washington County Design Forum that LUT has.
Oh, yeah, the developer.
Yeah, that may be another.
Just occurred recently. There'll be another one in the fall. I think it will be about the same timing that we're bringing
Well,
this
in
to the
case
board.
they have a mail list, you might want to ask.
Yes.
Can't hurt.
Yep,
Can't hurt to over-communicate, right?
that's a good suggestion. Thank
Because
you.
these updates sound reasonable to me, but I'm not in the business like they are. That was the only comment I had on your first question, on whatever slide number that was. The engagement, yeah. Any other board members, any questions on that?
Nope, looked good to me.
So, any other additional information needed? Okay,
Okay,
very useful. Thank you.
Great.
Good use of
Thank
time.
you.
Keep up the good work. All righty. So next, we'll move on to director announcements, and here's where I started off. I can't believe it's the month of May already, but Friday, May 8th, we're having the Clean Water Services Budget Committee meeting at 9 a.m. right here, right? The Clean Water Services budget has been proposed and is easily available on the Clean Water Services website, cleanwaterservices.org. Feel free to join us. The presentations are always very informative. On Tuesday, May 12th, the Clean Water Services Board of Directors will have a business meeting starting at 9 a.m. And immediately following that, we will have a CWS Board of Directors work session. Tuesday, May 26th, we will have a Clean Water Services Board of Directors business meeting starting at 5:30 p.m. right here, just like we did tonight. And then, because June's fast approaching as well, Tuesday, June 9th, we'll have a Clean Water Services Board of Directors meeting starting at 9 and a work session immediately following that meeting. So that's what's coming up for the next 5+ weeks. Any other Board of Director announcements for today? Okay, well, without further ado, I would ask for a motion to adjourn the CWS Board of Directors meeting for this evening.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please vote by raising your hand or saying aye. Thank you, everyone. Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously 5-0. Yep. And at 6:30, we will start the Washington County Board of County Commissioners meeting. Thank you.